Welcome back to today's program. As the country, South Africa that is, approaches its national elections, we're taking a look at the future of that country. Joining me from Johannesburg, South African journalist and political commentator Alistair Sparks. And here with me on the set, Gerald Lamel, Executive Director of Africa Action, based here in Washington, D.C. It's an organization that works for political and social justice in Africa. Alistair, there appears to be some bitterness coming from the most unlikely quarters in South Africa. This is what Archbishop Desmond Tutu said last night on a South African television station. He said, "Let me tell this ANC government what I told the Afrikaner government. You may have power now, but you're not God. Remember, you're not God, and one day you will get your comeuppance." What engenders comments like that from Archbishop Desmond Tutu?
Well, I think Desmond Tutu is very angry with what he sees as a measure of arrogance on the part of the African National Congress. Desmond, at least Jacob Zuma has said, for example, that the ANC is going to rule until Christ comes again. There's a lot of arrogant rhetoric in the air, and this is angering him a great deal. The government's attacks on the judiciary, the likelihood of the charges, the corruption charges against Zuma simply being dropped, all that has angered and aggravated Jacob Zuma. There have also been a series of recent blunders, including the prohibition or the refusal to grant the Dalai Lama a visa to come here. Now, he was invited by South Africa's own Nobel Peace Laureates, including Bishop Tutu, so the bishop is very angry about all of this. He thinks that the government is behaving badly, and he's an outspoken man. And I think, as you yourself know, and aren't you from South Africa, this is a very robust political country. People speak out openly. This is not this is not a kind of society that bows down before the ruling authority. It's very robust, quite aggressive at times in its political debate, and there's an election looming, and we have an angry bishop in our midst.
Gerald, the ANC has always enjoyed what some describe as good struggle credentials. And in fact, that's probably what many think are the source of its power, that it's the party of revolution, the party that brought about change in South Africa. But is there danger now, as Alistair Sparks has been pointing out, that South Africa's become effectively a one-party state?
Oh, absolutely. And this is, the arrogance of power. Power corrupts. And this is what we're seeing. And the tragedy for those of us who have been working on social justice in Africa is we start to see the same signs that we've seen for the last 60 years, where one-party states emerge and the party in power gets arrogant, and suddenly the power within the country is concentrated in a very small elite. This has contributed to the weakness across the continent. There are countries in Africa that should be amongst the wealthiest and most powerful in the world, but they are not, simply because the power is concentrated in so few hands. I don't think South Africa will ever get to that point. However, the ANC has the opportunity to provide real and significant leadership, not only in South Africa, but throughout the continent. They can blow this opportunity if they become the same kind of corrupt, ineffective, and slow-moving government that has plagued other countries across the continent.
Interesting question here. We received this via telephone, rather SMS text message from New Zealand. What do you think is Mr. Mandela's position regarding the ANC and COPE, the Congress of the People, the breakaway faction?
Well, Mr. Sparks might have a better idea on that, but I would say that he's probably a bit disappointed. I think that people, the expectations were so high, and while President Mandela certainly executed the office with a tremendous amount of grace and leadership, he was seen as a symbolic leader, and was given great leeway with regard to dealing with the practical issues on the ground. But I think that he probably expected that governance in South Africa would have moved farther along than it is now. It would have been more responsive. There would be no of the great corruption issues. Now, corruption is, you know, we have corruption here in the United States, and it's a significant problem. If we had less money in this country, it would be an enormous problem. But we have so much money, you know, it doesn't upset the government.
It's also legalized, yeah.
Yeah, it's legalized in many ways. But no, I would have to say, based on my guess, as a man who adores President Mandela, I think that he would be a bit disappointed.
Alistair, would former President Mandela be very disappointed at the turn of events that this group has broken away from the ANC?
You know, this is a very delicate issue. Nelson Mandela is now in his 90s. I don't think he is engaged in what is happening. I won't take it further. I don't think he is a participant in this election.
Well, let me ask you this. What kind of impact is COPE going to have on this election, in your view?
I think COPE could have had a significant impact, but I think COPE has blown it. COPE has done, it's been a chaotic, a chaotically disorganized condition all the way along. Its election organizer has just defected and gone back to the ANC. It's had squabbles about leadership, ended up in appointing a political non-entity to be their presidential candidate. It really has blown it. I think it had a chance to make a real mark, but it hasn't done so. And I think that a large part of the vote that would have gone to COPE will now go to other opposition parties, particularly the Democratic Alliance, which is trying very hard to rebrand itself and get away from the image it's had in the past of being overwhelmingly a white party. It's just scored in some by-elections in the coloured township areas around Cape Town, where it swept the boards. It increased its vote in municipal elections there from 37% to 76% just a few days ago. So I think, you know, we're going to have other parties growing, and what I expect to see after the election is coalition forming on the part of opposition parties. I do believe that they're going to start merging into a single party. I think COPE started something, it's cracked open the ANC, and I think we are going to, over time, and particularly through the municipal elections due in 2011, I think we're going to see a quite substantial new opposition united party emerge.
We've got an SMS, Gerald, from Namibia, the viewer there, and we've just got 20 seconds. Could South Africa lose some of its international influence under a Zuma presidency?
I think it's too soon to tell. I think people are underestimating Zuma. We don't know exactly what's going to happen under him, so I think it's a bit unfair to make a statement like that. There are two paths he can go. He can either provide leadership, or he can revert to the old politics that we've seen throughout the continent that has failed.
And that's where we have to leave it. Gerald Mell, thanks for joining us, and to Alistair Sparks in Johannesburg, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us. On our next show, as leaders of the world's most powerful nations gather in London, we take a look at what the G20 can and cannot achieve. See you next time.